So I know I mentioned last week as we sort of enter into, as we sort of welcome everyone to the show. I know I said last week that the upset alert meter last week was very elevated. This week, even worse, and we'll cover that here in just a moment. Of course, welcome in for Locals Podcast, episode 130. Episode 130 here for September 25th, 2025. Week 5 is upon us. It starts tomorrow. Well, technically starts tonight. I believe there's a Thursday night game along with Thursday night football. But yeah, week 5 is upon us. A lot of games to talk about, a lot of upset alerts, of course. So we didn't talk about certain games on the Tuesday show. We had a huge preview. But we moved some of those games to the upset alert that we will discuss a little bit here in just a few moments. But yeah, episode 125. Again, we have upset alerts as usual. Head coaches in trouble we'll talk about. Then we have Bucs Eagles. I have it on good authority that this will be a shorter show than last time. Last time we went for like over an hour, which is pretty rare for us. It happens sometimes, but we usually try to go around to 50 minutes or whatever. This show hopefully will be a little bit shorter. Yes, I'm also watching the Tropics. We'll probably touch on that towards the very end. I know this show is not about weather, but as a enthusiast of atmospheric science, we'll talk about it and we'll discuss. So if that's when you're here, first of all, welcome in. I'm sure we're getting a lot of viewers now because of how big a week this is in college football. Let me fix the camera here. How big of a week this is in college football, and we I want you guys to subscribe. It's not that hard. Nothing. I don't knock on the door or anything and force you guys to sign a form or stuff like that. All of this is completely free of charge. It's not behind a paywall or anything. We are completely independent media. Never talked to an advertiser before. If there's one that we trust, we'll bring them on. But for the most part, we are independent media. The show's completely free for you guys. So we'd like you guys to support us that way. So can you subscribe, YouTube channel, Twitter X, Spotify, podcast feed. That's all I'm asking for. All this information we're giving to you guys is free. Of course, we do this show 2 times a week. We'll have our Sunday reaction show as usual. So just keep an eye on that. That'll be a late, or not Sunday, early Sunday, late Saturday reaction show. We'll have that. So just keep an eye out for that. I'll let you guys know beforehand. Probably try to create the stream later today or tomorrow, just to make sure we are ready to go for that. But yeah, that will go live as soon as most of the games are over. I think the Georgia-Bama game will try to get that started. Let me fix the light here. This bothered me yesterday on Tuesday. If you notice, I was squinting a lot during that, so hopefully it doesn't happen again today. But yeah, on YouTube, second time using the face cam, finally doing so. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. I think you guys can hear me, yeah. So hopefully that'll be good. We're still trying to work out some stuff here. Let me see if I can move the camera just a little bit here. A little bit closer. There we go. Guys will be able to hear me, so that's fantastic. But let's get into it. Week 5 upset alerts. We do this sort of every single week, and how this works is we do this sort of like a traffic light, where at least that's the system we use. It's not like we use like numbers and stuff like that, or like a scale like 1 to 10. So, for example, red, a code red means the upset's probably going to happen, at least in my opinion. Yellow means it could happen. Green means there's a very small chance we're watching it, kind of. But there's a lot of, it's very elevated again, much like it has been this year. Frankly, it's been pretty elevated. Not a lot of green games. There's a lot of yellow and reds. And first up, do you guys know who Florida State's playing this week? Who do you think they're playing? Like, are they playing, at home against, NC State, Wake Forest? They're playing at Virginia. And that was the game that a lot of folks, including me, back in like June and July, were sort of touting about Florida State, how important that game was if they lost the Bama game to sort of, wipe some spit off the camera there, sort of to kind of keep your psyche if they would have lost that game to Bama. Well, they won against Bama. They're 3-0, which was kind of not really predicted by us and a lot of our folks. And they're on the road at Virginia. And I believe the line is, 6.5, I believe. We should probably look these up as we're here, since we're going to be having more of a shorter, not a shorter show, but it's not we're not doing a lot of predictions. But yeah, so according to FanDuel, not a sponsor of the show, just an asset we use for research purposes. Florida State is a 6.5-point favorite on the road. That is in the yellow category. They have Miami on deck. And Miami is resting, by the way. They're off this week and they're off the week after next week, which is a weird thing. So after the second bye week, after the Florida State game, they have basically ACC games galore after. So kind of a weird scheduling dynamic there. But yeah, Florida State's on the road. It's a look at spot. Virginia, by the way, their quarterback Chandler Morris. Yes, that is Chad Morris' son. He is there. He's been on like 5 different teams. It seems like he is there. Of course, Tony Elliott. He's gotten better. I'm still not a big fan of him. But it's a game we're watching. If Florida State would have lost that Bama game, I would say this would be in the red category because of the whole, is the team going to quit on Norvell? That whole thing we're worried about. So far, that's not been the case. And in fact, it's the opposite in that you're hoping they don't overlook Virginia, right? You hope you don't overlook them. And they've had issues doing that in the past, right? And I think there was during the Jimbo years, right? 2012, they at least lost to NC State. A game that a lot of Florida State fans still talk about. So there's a history of them sort of having this happen to them. I think a couple of years ago, they went on the road to Louisville, and they were undefeated too. Jordan Travis goes down. They ended up winning the game, but it was close. But this one I'm a little concerned about it. We'll be watching it. But yeah, that one is in the yellow category. Next one, also on, I believe, tomorrow as well. I'm very concerned about this one. TCU going to Arizona State. It's in the red category. I believe the line, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Arizona State's actually favored. It's right there in front of me. Yeah, they're favored by 2.5. I think Arizona State's going to win the game outright. I don't like this spot for TCU. I think Arizona State, I think a lot of folks after that Mississippi State loss, which, it could turn out that Mississippi State's actually a legit okay team. I think Arizona State, Cade Dillingham, and yes, I know losing Cam Scatterbo, it sucks, and I think that's been sort of a reason why they're not hitting the same gears they were last year. They still have Sam Levitt, who's a decent quarterback. They still have decent now players. I still like their coaching staff. I just feel like you're getting this team at home, sort of a moment, just sort of a standalone game. I believe this game is on Fox. I just kind of feel like TCU, they were a good team. I like Josh Hoover. I like what Sonny Dykes have been doing so far. But I don't know, it just feels off about this game to me. So I think, I agree with Vegas. I think Arizona State's going to win this game, which is a little bit shocking. I think to those who don't follow sports betting, you just assume that, the ranked team should be favored. Not always the case. There's always little quirks in there. As it's a travel situation. You're going to the, I believe it's the Pacific time zone or a Mountain time zone. But yeah, I think this game here is a classic example of just because you're a ranked team doesn't mean you're always going to be favored by either favored directly or favored by a lot. In most cases, you're not always going to be favored by, more than touchdown. Sometimes you go on the road, you're going to be favored by 4.5, 3.5, and in some cases you'll be a dog. And I think this makes sense to me. So I like Arizona State here to win, and I think they win the game outright. Next one, also that concerns me a little bit. Louisville, a sneaky undefeated team. I believe they're still in our poll, the Tuesday poll. Let me double check here. I know it's been a couple days. They are still undefeated, 3-0. They have been pretty shaky off turnover stuff. That's been sort of hampering them a little bit. But look, they got past James Madison. Very good for beating a former U.S. president. Now you have to go to Pitt. And, Pat Narduzzi sort of, the thing of them, whenever you go up there, it's, you have to deal with the defense. It's, kind of a weird place to play at because you're playing in an NFL stadium. This one I'm a little bit concerned about, but again, I think Pitt has limitations on offense. Eli Holstein, he's okay, but, it's not my favorite quarterback in the ACC. I mean, he's fine, but he's also going to, probably make a mistake or two during the game. And, I'd imagine Louisville, too, is probably going to have, bake in a couple turnovers. I'm watching it, but I'm not concerned about it, but we're watching it. This one. This next game, Notre Dame, Arkansas, it's very confusing to me. So if I go over to FanDuel, let me see here. Here it is. It's the noon game on ABC. Notre Dame is favored by 4.5. And Arkansas is coming off of a loss to Memphis, which is actually probably a legit good team in the G5. However, funny things can happen here. So a couple of things can be true. One thing can be true that Arkansas, they're in wounded hog mode. They lost to Memphis last week. They're back at home for the first time in like a whole month. I think this game could be, a rallying point for them. It could be, hey, it's us against the world. We need to show everyone that we're not as bad as, people think they are. There's also a rallying point opportunity for Sam Pittman to kind of shave off the things that have been sort of going on up there. We'll talk more about that later in the coaching and the head coaches in trouble segment. But That can be true. Using this game as a their Super Bowl rallying point for them. But also could be that since it is borderline October, late September, it's also hunting season in Arkansas. And one of the things too, the guys on Cover 3 mentioned a lot, and look, it's a legit thing to bring up. As for Arkansas teams, especially the really bad teams, like when they start checking out, if they're really bad, the fans will check out because it's hunting season up there. I think it's bow and arrow season, I believe, or action bow season. I don't think it's like rifle season yet. I think that comes later on. But those folks, especially if it's a noon kickoff, I think it is a legit concern how many Arkansas fans are going to show up. Like, will the stadium be like 70 or 80% Arkansas fans and like 20% Notre Dame fans, or is it going to be 60% Arkansas fans and 40% Notre Dame fans? So that the crowd thing, that's a concern. I don't expect it to be a very big crowd, at least from the Arkansas side of things. I do believe a lot of folks are starting to unfortunately check out. This game, if Arkansas would have, if the season would have gone the way it maybe could have, right? Maybe you lose to Ole Miss, but you beat Memphis. I would have put this in the red categories, and even going back into spring and summer, we were bringing up this game as hey, look, this could be a scary game, but I just think Notre Dame's a little bit better. It's in the yellow category. I'm watching it, but I don't know. It feels like to me Arkansas is in the borderline of quitting. The team to me just seems lost. Their defense is not very good. The offense though is not the problem, which has been kind of a theme. But yeah, we're watching it, but I'm not too concerned about this game. But like I said, this could be their Super Bowl. This could be again a rallying point for Sam Pittman, or it could be that fans are checking out. It's hunting season. We'll get to basketball. So that one is in the yellow category. Now this one, also no one's talking about this one too. This is kind of weird. So Indiana is going to Iowa after they beat Illinois with all the turnovers and injuries. And look, I correctly picked Indiana to beat Iowa. I was like the only person besides folks in like Bloomington and in between picking them. Now they're rewarded with going to Iowa. And I believe this game, if I'm not mistaken, is an early game, I believe. So it's not a night game, I don't think. It's afternoon. So Indiana is favored by 7.5. Here's the thing. Well, I'm not a fan of Kirk Ferentz and his offense. I'll be honest with that. I'm not. I've been very vocal about that. A lot of folks who know me personally know that. I'm not a fan of that offense in general. It's not a very aesthetically pleasing. It's very much so. It's not even like the best versions of his first style offense. It's just bad. But I still have a lot of respect for Phil Parker as a DC there, and it's at home. And so you have to think, okay, Indiana's coming in there. They're riding high off of what happened last week. They feel really confident. Now they have to go to Kinnick, which I'm assuming should be a full packed house, I think. I don't think those fans have checked out yet. But so they're on the road. It's, kind of a sleepy game. You think you should win it. You're favored by 7.5, according to FanDuel. I'm concerned here. I'm actually kind of concerned here. I'm not going to pick who's going to win the game outright. I don't know if I'm going to do that. But I would just say, if I am an Indiana fan, I'm not very comfortable about this. I am very concerned. So this is in the red category. It's just something about going to Kinnick Stadium, riding high after last week. It's sort of a letdown spot. I'm concerned here. And they're giving 7.5. That's kind of big. So if I was betting this, which I don't personally bet, but I do like to look at the numbers and stuff as a research thing. If I were betting, I would probably say bet Indiana or Iowa to cover mightily. I think 7.5 is a little too big here. All right, let's keep going more. Got a couple more games here. Washington hosting Ohio State. I've been waiting to break down this game. This is in the red category. I'll get that out of the way. And I think Washington's going to win the game outright. I may sound crazy about saying that, but I feel really good about this. This is something I've been thinking about all the way back in like June and July, that I firmly believed that I felt Washington had a really good chance of beating Ohio State. It's at home. Washington State you played them last week. Ohio State's coming to your place. They're traveling multiple time zones. I'm never a fan of that when teams have to do that, even before this new era of college football. That is another big red flag. Another red flag too is that it's a Super Bowl moment for Washington here and for Jeff Fish. Jeff Fish being considered for a lot of other jobs, particularly that Florida job. But if it opens up because Jeff Fish is, you didn't know he's a Florida alum. He didn't play football there, but he's a Florida alum. But it's a Super Bowl moment for them. It's sort of like Memphis last week with Arkansas, but Ryan Silverfield and some of these coaches who are being considered of other jobs, they will circle some of these games. And you saw this again with Hugh Freeze back a couple of years ago with, ironically, Arkansas when they played Liberty, to where some of these coaches, when they're being considered for these bigger jobs, that they will try to circle a game or two as sort of a, hey, this is a proof of concept game to a future fan base. And to your, I think some of these coaches probably think, hey, some of these future, or these fans who are potentially fans of a team I might be going to, check out this game, watch it. Like for example, like when another example, this is going one. I know it's not totally like this, or it's a different, I don't know, I guess level, but when Jim Harbaugh was being considered for the Chargers, it's kind of like that playoff game against Bama, but sort of like a moment for Michigan saying, hey, prospective Chargers fans, watch the game because he may. It might be a preview of what you're going to be seeing, and ultimately that ended up being true that he was going to the Chargers. But either way, this to me could be that type of game for Jeff Fish. It's sort of like a, hey, future fan base, watch this game. If you want to know a proof of concept of what your, what could it look like if I'm the coach of your team, tune in at 3:30 on CBS. So that means, of course, Gary, Brad, Jenny will be there as well. But yeah, I feel good about Washington winning here. Damon Williams, though, the quarterback that no one's talking about, had a very quiet, good good first half of the season so far. Dual threat guy can run around. Ohio State has not faced a offense, at least to me, that has been competent enough, and that's given the fact they faced Texas. Now, I will say, though, Washington, obviously, the talent level between them and Texas is obviously lower. They don't have good enough defense, I don't think. I do expect this to be a high-scoring game, but I just kind of feel like this might be the best offense they have faced at all, period. I mean, I think that's kind of clear that that could be the case here. So I like Washington win the game outright. So this isn't a red category. This to me is probably the upset of the year so far. This to me is definitely one that I am circling and I am very concerned about if I'm a Ohio State fan. Could be wrong here. I know this is definitely out on a limb, very much so out on an island here, except for those who live in Seattle, I guess. But that one, yeah, very concerned, extremely concerned. In fact, I'm picking them to win the game outright. Washington. Next one, also concerned, another code red. Tennessee at Mississippi State. What do you think the line is here? What do you think it is? Like 17.5, 20.5? Let me check in. I'm pretty sure it's a little bit lower than people probably think. Let me see here. 10. There it is. 17.5. Thinking 13.5, 24.5. The line is 7.5. Much like the other game. Which one did we just talk about? I think it was the Indiana-Iowa game. Same thing applies here. That's too big of a number. Again, sort of like some of these teams. You just mentioned Washington, and same with Arkansas a little bit. This could be Mississippi State's Super Bowl here. And I know they sort of had that with Arizona State, but it's kind of different now because it's an SEC opponent. And you have been battle-tested. Same with Tennessee, but I will say this Tennessee secondary is still concerning to me, and they can get got. And Mississippi State, again, they run, the similar veer and shoot thing with Jeff Lebby. So they may help you a little bit, given that you see it in practice every single day. But still, it's still concerning, right? Not to mention it's on the road, right? I mean, I'll say this. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Mississippi State, in terms of the atmosphere, not necessarily a program, but atmosphere, extremely undervalued in college football because the cowbells. In fact, it's a smaller stadium too. Helps. The noise is more condensed. At the same time with Kansas State, when that team's really good, that's a extremely hard place to play at. If you don't believe me, go ask a lot of those, like Oklahoma, Texas back when they're in the Big 12, and go ask like Auburn, for example, when he went there in 2014. Some of those guys were on staff there, even some of the players will probably tell you, yeah, that was a really, really tough place to play at. Mississippi State's the same thing, and I am extremely concerned for Tennessee. So this one, I'm not picking them to win the game outright in Mississippi State, but I do believe this will be a close game. Very competitive, probably a high-scoring game. I just don't trust Tennessee secondary right now. I just don't. We saw it sort of the cracks form against Syracuse. They definitely showed up against Georgia. Yes, I know people will make the comments saying, Mike Bobo had a good game, a good game calling plays, and he sure did. All right, I'm not taking that away from Georgia. I'm not taking away that they've upgraded their receiver core. I just don't know if I trust Tennessee secondary still. Even though, yes, they faced Georgia, that's fine, but I kind of feel like folks are forgetting that Syracuse game. They were kind of, getting had on. This game really concerns me. So this one in the red category, I'm not picking the upset here necessarily, but I am extremely concerned here. In the last game, again, a lot of red here. Again, this is probably the most elevated we've had the upset alert in the past, like this last year and this year so far. So last one here, another code red game. Do you guys know who Iowa State's playing? Or actually, let me ask you this: Who are the undefeated teams? The 4 undefeated teams in the Big 12. Well, one of them is Iowa State, as you may know. They're undefeated. Texas Tech is undefeated. TCU, I believe, is also undefeated as well still. So there's like 4 or 5. So that's, let me see where's Big 12 standings here. So there's a lot of teams that are undefeated. But who are all the teams that are undefeated, though, in the Big 12? Do you know? I guess maybe I should have said that. But yes, Iowa State's 1. Texas Tech is 1. Houston is 1. Kind of sneaky. Houston's one of them. Billy Fritz is, waving. Everyone's ignoring him. So they're there. BYU's undefeated. They're kind of quiet as well. TCU, I just mentioned. Central Florida's 1 too. But guess who else is undefeated? Arizona. Yes. Brett Brennan's Arizona Wildcats, who were awful last year. Everyone, the theories are going around about, hey, could they can him after 1 year? It was so bad. Look, I was concerned about him. I was worried about his job security. Turns out that, everything got calmed down. It was a transitional year. Previous coach leaves to go to a different school. So, you could pass the last year as like, look, it was a missed opportunity. You had some good talent at receiver with McMillan. It just didn't work out. But now you're undefeated. Now, granted, you have not faced decent competition. I will definitely say that is the problem here with Arizona, right? You face a Hawaii team. They're okay, but they're not really that good. You face an FCS team. You beat a Kansas State team that's shockingly bad as one who picked and won the conference, and I have egg over my face now. Not literally, but it feels like it. I wrongfully picked them to win the conference, but so yes, your competition has not been that great, but this is again a Super Bowl opportunity for you, and they're going to Iowa State. And the line, I believe, and this by the way is a 4 o'clock, I believe, on ESPN. So it's being nationally televised. I believe the spread here. Let's see here, Iowa State is a -6.5. So it's not a big spread here, even though you're out here at home. And I think what Vegas is telling you, if they're on a neutral field, this would be like a 3.5 point game, I believe. So I am concerned here for Iowa State. I think Iowa State, in a lot of ways, and I know, look, if Josh Peter, if you're listening to the show, buddy, I'm sorry, but I feel like to me, Iowa State, the reason why I'm not high on them is because, obviously now with the Kansas State game, you look at it a little differently. Again, I get it. It's in the future. Or you know that to begin with, but it kind of feels like to me that Iowa State is sort of living on borrowed time a little bit. You got past Iowa, you looked really bad against against ASU, the other ASU, Arkansas State on the road, and now you're rewarded with playing the other undefeated team left in the Big 12, which is Arizona. And that to me doesn't sit right with me for Iowa State. I just kind of feel like they're due for a loss. And I think it could come this weekend. So not only is this game in the code red, and I do trust, Brent Brennan, and I think they are kind of getting things, hopefully figured out. I think Arizona wins the game outright. Again, as crazy as that sounds, I think that's a legit possibility here. So, yeah, how about that? So a lot of code reds and a lot of yellows here, very elevated here, and this early in the season too. It's not like we're like, in November after Halloween and we're having very elevated lists. No, this is pretty early. So, yeah, a lot of yellows and reds here for the upset alert. Of course, I'll post this on Twitter either later today or tomorrow to let folks sort of take a gander at it. So, if you're at this point in the show, thank you for tuning in. Again, we do this show twice a week on Thursdays and Tuesdays around this time. If we have to do it later, we have to do it later. But talk a lot of college football here. Obviously, the show today is mostly on football. Talk college football. We do the Buccaneers usually towards the end of the show. We also do some Marvel and Star Wars news, and there's certainly had a lot of that to be had this week. We've covered out on the Tuesday show, believe it or not. I wasn't originally going to put it in here, but I felt like I was going to forget about it. So we ended up covering it on the Tuesday show somehow. And that show was like one of the longest ones we've had in a while, too. That's like an hour and 12 minutes, which is fine. But, hey, got a lot of things to cover this week. Very, very active week. And the next week's no different either for college football next week. We have like Florida State, Miami, Texas is going to UF. A lot of big games, too, next week. So, it doesn't stop. It does not stop. Every single week is a big week in college football. Even though the casuals and NFL flybys will tell you otherwise. So, make sure you subscribe here. This show's free, all right? And again, like I said, nothing happens to you when you subscribe to the channel. You don't turn on the notifications. I don't personally for the shows I follow, but it's there if you want to, I guess. But no, this show's completely free to you guys. We are independent media. We are very much so. My eyebrows itching here a little bit where I head there. We are very much so independent media. That's who we are. So never talked to an advertiser before. Never had a conversation with an advertiser at all, and we try to keep it that way. We try to keep this show completely free. So for you guys, and all this information for you guys is all brutally available for you guys for no charge at all. Get some water real quick, and we'll do head coaches in trouble. So I'm gonna go take a quick drink of water. I'm gonna mute myself on here on YouTube. Make sure I forget to unmute myself. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, we're back on YouTube with the audio and on Spotify, I guess, even though I didn't move myself on Spotify, but that's okay. All right, head coaches in trouble here. This is not my favorite segment to do. We typically, at least on our show, we don't talk about the hot seat that much, but sometimes we have to, especially around this time of the year. So a lot of coaches talk about here in terms of them being potentially in trouble. This one's pretty obvious. Billy Napier. Not much to really say here. I know a lot of folks were wondering would there be a change made this week because it's a bye week. Typically you see a lot of teams. Oklahoma State. There's during game week, but either way, you usually have teams do it during a bye week because you prefer to install a lot of new stuff with the interim coach during the week. But the issue here is because of the redshirt rule that you don't want guys redshirting once the guy who you sign up for to play for gets fired, right? You don't want guys to all of a sudden, start dropping out and whatnot. So I understand why they're not doing it now, but it just feels like to me it's going to happen soon, whether it's, after the Texas game or after the Georgia game down the line. I think, unfortunately for Florida, unlike last year, I don't foresee this whole situation righting itself. I think it can probably get worse for them. Unfortunately, I know a lot of folks make the argument for Billy Napier. Well, this year DJ Lagway wasn't fully healthy. Of course, he was in if you didn't see the stuff or even my video after in the John Mateer video, I mentioned this as well that DJ Lagway was in a walking in a medical boot again, and look, let's be real, he's kind of made out of glass, even though for a kid who's fairly good in terms of physical abilities, but the quarterback injury thing that's been sort of bugging them this ever since the spring. I know a lot of folks will bring that up, and look, that's true. The fact that he hasn't had a lot of time to get chemistry with these receivers and whatnot, but it doesn't matter though. It doesn't really matter at this point. He's had multiple years to get this thing fixed. And then what's crazy, again, I'll echo what Josh Paytas said. Look, they're good organizationally. If you're to visit them or at least hear him talk and hear all these other folks who've been there and talk, it's not propaganda, but it's just them being honest. They're good organization. They have all the things that need to be that you need to be successful here in college football. And it's so different than what you see in Austin, Texas, or in Columbus, Ohio, or in Eugene, Oregon. It's very similar, at least from what I've heard. But just the on-field stuff, the clock management thing, and it's just that's been the problem. And the fact that Billy Napier, again, is not an offensive-minded coach. He's not. He's a CEO coach, and he's calling the plays. And that, I will admit, that is not that's really that's not good. And I think you are starting to see truly how bad this thing could get, and I think it could get much worse. So Billy Napier, clearly he's in trouble. This next one kind of under the radar a little bit. one thing a lot of folks are talking about this is Chris Klieman, who I respect a lot. And, he won the Big 12 a couple years ago. Again, sort of revisionist history, because a lot of folks think, oh, yeah, TCU in 2022, they won made it to the national championship. They won the Big 12. Well, not so fast. It was Kansas State and Chris Klieman. However, though, while I may think they're good, while I picked them to, wrongfully, though, win the Big 12, I still think they're a good program. But there has kind of been this sort of, like I don't know how to explain. I guess like the banging up the drums for, regime change there. A lot of folks aren't happy with him right now. And look, he's had success there. I mean, outside of 2020, it's they're averaging like 9 wins per year, which is kind of what you're getting with Bill Snyder. But it's like you're hearing all this stuff about the fans aren't happy. There's a lot of folks pushing out the quote unquote regime change, with him being ousted out and them wanting to bring Colin Client back as the head coach because he played there and whatnot. I don't know, man. This one it feels like the whole Brett Brennan thing last year, where it's like you're hearing the drum beat of a whole coaching change and didn't happen. Look, I'm watching it, but I don't think it's gonna happen. But I think you could use this sort of like with a lot of these head coaches, where it's a throwaway season, it's a lost season. Malzahn had these at Auburn. James Franklin had it in 2020 and half 2020 and half 2021. Kind of had, two, kind of one combined, I guess. Well, I don't know, but technically, I guess he had 2 seasons for one throwaway. Malzahn's had his. Ryan Day, I guess, kind of had one. Has had one. Kirby Smart's had one. So, the same with Sark too at Texas. So a lot of these coaches have had their throwaway season. I just wonder if Chris Klieman just hasn't had his yet. And this is it. So again, yes, I am aware there's a lot of talk about regime change and them getting him out, and people feel like the program's gone stale. I'm not there yet. Yes, it has looked atrocious, even with a team that I thought was going to be fairly good with Avery Johnson, who has looked very disappointing this year. I'm not saying that they need to make a change here. I'm not saying there needs to be a change of leadership and all this and that, but I mean, it's out there. I mean, even Josh Pate kind of hinted at it on his show on Tuesday a little bit, in passing, I believe. So it's not just me saying it. There's a lot of other folks who are throwing out, the whole regime change thing, and they're, making it, they're kind of beating the drums for change there. And we'll see. Again, I'm not totally on board with that. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see. This one, though, and this is weird, too. So Fickle at Wisconsin, look, the only thing, and I think this is similar to Billy Napier in a little bit of ways, that their schedule, much like with Florida's this year and last year, it's really tough, man. It really is. And well, I can use that to defend him. I can't defend the product on the field, right? I know the other excuse too is, well, he's lost his quarterback 2 years in a row. Well, that might be true. That's also the fault of the staff not having a quality backup to support them. So I can't defend him on that, nor can I defend him on all the other mistakes they have made. Like, for example, bringing in Phil Longo kind of turned out to be a very, very disastrous hire for them. And look, I'm not saying that Fickle – I think the comparison here, it's not like a fair comparison, but it is in a lot of ways a little similar, although this coach has a much longer track record of being a head coach. But this kind of does feel like a very smaller scale, sort of a micro version of what happened with Rich Rod at Michigan a little bit. When Rich Rod came in, I was pretty young back when this happened, but after, hearing the stories and whatnot and doing the research, it feels very similar to that. With Fickle being there at Wisconsin, he's bringing in this sort of new, spread option thing. It's no longer I formation running the football like, with Brady Alvarez once. And I saw his comments about the fans being spoiled, which I kind of rerun. It's like, come on, dude, really? Like, you haven't been relevant for like 10 years, literally. But it does feel like Rich Rod a little bit at Michigan. Again, sort of, bringing in a style of offense that does not fit your personnel. You realize that's not working, so you try to go a different direction, but it's a little bit too late. Again, I get it. Rich Rod has a much larger, span of coaching and much larger, better resume than Fickle. But these both do feel very similar. It's ironic they're both happening in the Big Ten. And I don't know. I mean, Wisconsin's a weird place, too. And you have, like, the Barry Alvarez thing with, sort of the quote-unquote Wisconsin Mafia. I think he was the reason why they fired, Gary Anderson, I believe, who was there in, like, 2013, 2014. And it was just, like, after the Big Ten title game in 2014 when they got blown out. And he ends up getting fired. And then it turns out it was sort of like a, sort of like a backdoor regime change there because they didn't like the direction the offense is going or something like that. I don't know. It was a theory that's been pointed out there, and I kind of am believing it a little bit. Where I have believed it for a while. Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, just look up Gary Anderson. I think that's who that was. Let me see here. Gary Anderson. I believe he was there. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, okay. I was making sure that was him. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they tried to do a backdoor regime change, and it ended up working. I think the thing was with him and Alvarez. I think it was either you resign or take another job where we fire you. And Anderson just kind of gave up. He's like, all right, fine, I'll leave. And that's kind of the Wisconsin Mafia. And I think Fickell's sort of dealing with that, with him bringing this new offense, and it turns out it's not working. And now you're hearing all this stuff now with Alvarez again. Him inserting himself again in the headline. So yeah, it's toxic. It's really toxic up there, especially with the influence he has or the sphere of influence that Alvarez has up there. So that's part of the problem, and this is why I kind of feel like that job, if it were to open up, it's just really hard to deal with, man. Again, I'm not saying Alvarez is not like smart. He is smart. He's not stupid, but I also think his tendency to sort of wiggle his way into things, and him wanting to always correct coaches. Not to mention again that whole Gary Anderson regime change thing that went on behind the scenes. It's just, I don't know, man. Just that whole place up there, especially in football, is just very odd how they operate. And yeah, Fickell. Again, I get it, the quarterback thing, but it's like, dude, you could have very easily gotten quarterbacks. You should have had quarterbacks who were well and qualified, to be the starter behind your transfer guys. And he's not done that. The talent there is just not there anymore. At least they're not getting good enough talent there. And just hasn't worked out. So this next one, we have two more here in the SEC. One of them, here's the thing. So this one, Sam Pittman, I mentioned, I guess this sort of ties back to the whole Arkansas Notre Dame game. I like Sam Pittman, right? Sam Pittman, the thing of him, it's like, he's one of those guys, it'll be probably fun to go to a bar and have a couple of beers with and hang out, and who won't want to do that? But as I don't know, with Sam, again, I get that he's a vibes guy and he's a culture guy. It's sort of like a, different flavor and sort of a way of a head coach, kind of like Edward Jerome, but not really like him. But sort of like that, that fun, energetic guy. I will give Pittman this, and I feel like with Arkansas fans, I just don't know if they really understand how special, or not special, just how thankful I think they should be about how Pittman sort of was able to shepherd them after the whole Chad Morris thing, which look, that, this is way beyond that. This is way better than that. This is not Chad Morris level bad. At least I don't think it is. But look, I'll admit there's been times under Pittman the last couple years or so, where it's gone close to that level. Close to Chad Morris level, like for example that Auburn game a couple years ago. That's like if very, very much still got flashbacks probably from, if you're Arkansas fan, to the Chad Morris era. Just how badly that team was playing, and just how flat they looked. But I think a lot of Arkansas fans, if Pittman were to leave or resign or get fired or whatever, I mean, look, he's not coming back next year. At least I don't think. I'm assuming he's not. I wonder how Arkansas fans 10 years from now will see Pittman and look, I know it's tough right now, but I wonder 10 years from now, if you're an Arkansas fan living in, Fayetteville or whatever, Fort Smith, Arkansas, you go, look, the Pittman era didn't end very well. It got really stale, but he did shepherd us from the Chad Morris era, and at least got Arkansas respected again, right? That 21-21 season, I agree with Trey Biddy. It's surprising to me they didn't really package that as like, hey, look, this could be what Arkansas could be in the future, right? This could be a turning point for them. But it just didn't happen. You have the year after, and things got really weird and whatnot, and it just, I don't know. It just, I think, I understand why I agree that things have gone stale. And yes, Arkansas is a, take the checks, take the losses type program. They don't obviously spend the same way as other schools in the SEC. Clearly in football, they're obviously more invested in basketball now. But I feel like Arkansas fans are not going to fully appreciate what Pittman did in terms of shepherding them again from the Chad Morris era into him and sort of keeping things stable. You wasn't, you weren't going to see that level of atrociousness again. At least I don't think in Arkansas football. And so far, besides maybe a few games or two, you haven't. It's been, fairly competent, fairly competitive. You've been going to bowl games. You've been ranked a little bit in the polls. So, yeah, Pittman's hard for me. Again, I get why they probably should move on and, obviously got to restart the hype cycle and get fans excited. sell tickets and whatnot. And I get that. It's, part of business in college football. But, it's tough knowing that it's not like Sam Pittman, who I respect, and he seems like a good person. It's just, probably a fun person to be around. It's just, I don't know. I'm not really sure, but if Arkansas fans are, if they'll remember him differently in 10 years and go, it got bad towards the end, but it wasn't that bad. So this last one here, Hugh Freeze. This can get pretty toxic pretty quickly. I don't think a lot of folks realize this, but this could get really bad fast. So they get Texas A&M this weekend. I picked A&M to win and cover. A&M's rested. Auburn's coming off of a very emotional game against Oklahoma. They ended up losing the game. Now, look, I bumped the computer there. I have heard a lot of things about Auburn fans and certain people who follow them and what they've had to say. And a lot of it's kind of been, hey, well, let's, temper down the rhetoric a little bit. Let's turn down the temperature. It's not that bad. We were competitive against the quote-unquote Heisman Trophy winner who now is going to be out for a little bit. We were even competitive. Defense is playing well. We just, we're maybe a few big plays away from winning that game. And you're not wrong. And I think I agree with some folks who are saying, sort of a version of this line of, well, it's not so much, Auburn should be afraid of playing these teams. These teams should be afraid of playing Auburn because we have a good defense. And, they're not as bad as we thought they were when they played Baylor and whatnot. And that might be true, but I just kind of feel like this schedule can get – the way the schedule's set up and the way this team sort of made up, things can get really bad in a hurry. And I use caution when saying that for most of the time, but I have a feeling this can get out of control pretty quickly. Knowing Auburn, knowing how hawkish the fan base can be sometimes and things do not go well. And trust me, look, when things start to go downhill, that fan base can get very hawkish. I don't blame them, but that's just what it is. And whether or not in a month or so they were advocating for a regime change with the head coach and they want him out, I don't know. The way the schedule sets up, I just don't know if a lot of these Auburn fans who are sort of, I don't know, like blind to the fact that, we kept it close to Oklahoma and the Heisman Trophy winner. I feel like they're getting blinded by that a little bit. I just feel like they're kind of in denial that this could go out of control. And look, I could be totally wrong here. And this, they could beat A&M next week and they can package all this up and they're on the bye week, and then they get Georgia at home, and they can really make a huge statement again. That could happen. I mean, look, Auburn defensively, look, they played really well against Oklahoma last week. Yes, the Baylor game still exists, but maybe that is I don't know. I guess more of a reflection on Baylor's offense being actually pretty legit. But I don't know. But this whole Hugh Freeze thing is very weird. I mean, for different, a lot of sides about this, and I've heard the Auburn fans who are defending him, saying, "Hey, let's turn down the temperature." There's also people like me who are saying, "Hey, look, if things really go south, you guys could very easily, be advocating for a regime change at head coach or whatnot." And of course, you've also had a lot of folks bring up, potential like a John Summerall could come in as head coach and replace Hugh and whatnot. So I don't know, just Auburn. The best way I can describe Auburn right now is it's a powder keg. The whole thing, if things can go bad, it will explode, and then it could be a total disaster, and it'll be completely toxic. And I mean, we've seen it before, right? The Brian Harsin thing, the Malzahn thing. It's we'll see with Auburn, but it's I don't know. This schedule for them, I keep on telling you guys, I don't see a lot of games they're going to be favored in, and that includes Vanderbilt too. Like when they go on the road to Vanderbilt, I would imagine they're probably going to be a dog in that game too. So it's going to get very scary there. Potential to get scary for Auburn, but also, it could turn out to be a I don't know, like a new starting point for them, like a new lease on life. I don't know, but we'll see. I'm going to get a quick drink of water real quick, and then we will continue with, we'll finish up the show with Bucs Eagles. Love our big game in football. How about that? This whole weekend, by the way, you have college football this weekend, you have the NFL, which, look, we're not an NFL show necessarily besides Tampa, but a lot of big games too in the NFL, a lot of sneaky good games. Obviously, Tampa Buccaneers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Eagles. You have like I think it's Ravens, Chiefs, I believe. And yeah, kind of a sneaky good week in the NFL too. Fairly good. But yeah, I'm gonna get some water real quick, and then we'll wrap up the show with Bucs prediction. Okay. Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the Philadelphia Eagles for like the fourth year in a row, I think. Tampa, as a Bucs fan, it feels like we've been playing the Eagles. Like, it's like them and like the 49ers every single year. Now, some of it's because of like divisional placement, and I like understand that. That's how it works. But, man, I really just feel like we're playing them a lot lately. And this year we're playing both 49ers and Eagles again. So, how about that? But, so this game, of course, is the early game at 1 o'clock Eastern on Fox. Tom Brady, Kevin Burkhardt, Aaron Andrews, Tom Rinaldi will be there. The whole Fox's big crew. So it's definitely America's game of the week. But so I followed this a lot. Of course, Tampa, they're 3-0. Eagles being 3-0. But in a lot of ways, while both of these teams seem different, like the Eagles are certainly more healthier than Tampa. You have Evans, Mike Evans is going to be out for a while. You have a lot of injuries on the line. You're getting some guys back. I think Wirfs is playing. I think Chris Klieman's going to come back, at least try to go. It just feels like, to me, Tampa feels like the more hunky team, in my opinion, even as a Bucs fan. Of course, injuries are piling up. You're not having Mike Evans out there, but it's just, to me, what this game sort of represents is it's something that Josh Pace brought up before in college ball. And it's sort of what at least what I call is like the red light theory. And the red light theory is sort of like, you see this before, where it's like people who run, if you ever notice this on the road, when folks have a tendency to run a red light, but it's sort of like, by accident, no one, you don't get caught. But then you keep on doing it multiple times, and eventually you're going to get caught. If there's like a cop or a state trooper or a sheriff behind you, you'll obviously get pulled over. I feel like that's kind of like the Bucs right now. The Bucs, to me, feel like a team that has been running too many red lights. They have not been caught, but eventually that team's going to catch them. And it could be this week. Again, not to mention the injury stuff. Again, the O-line. Look, it was fine last week, but still it wasn't great. I mean, you had a couple times where Baker got sacked and whatnot. And, of course, special teams, completely untrustworthy. I do not trust them right now at all, period. And that's becoming a very scary trend for Tampa. The Eagles, though, on the flip side, very physical team. Obviously, they want to emphasize run the football. Of course, you have Saquon, and everyone will make it a big deal about the whole receiver thing, but A.J. Brown's not getting enough touches. And, well, that is true, but that's not the style of team, though. That's not their team. That's not the way they do it. Obviously, Tampa's a lot different. They emphasize more a balanced approach of the previous coordinators and the current with Josh Gazard. But the difference in this game, to me, in my opinion, is going to be Jalen Hurts and sort of his running ability. I think Tampa has, at least so far in a way, kind of struggled with running quarterbacks. Tyrod last week, him or Justin Fields, I think that would have been interesting to see how they would have dealt with them. You had Michael Penix week 1. They struggled with him a little bit. So, obviously, Jalen, he's obviously not like a true, he's more of a pure runner, but he can scoot, obviously. He's a very physical runner. I think that's going to really going to be a challenge for Tampa, especially with a defense that is being depleted with injuries. That's going to be challenged a little bit. And I wonder, too, with the Bucs secondary being as bad as it is, could this be a potential breakout game for the Eagles passing game, perhaps? Maybe Sirianni and company and that coaching staff there, maybe they are bold enough to say, hey, you know what? Well, we may not be able to run the football with Saquon and that really good Bucs rush defense, which has been fairly good so far, a little bit. Haven't allowed a whole lot of big runs for the most part. Has been the only big run they had was like a run after catch with the Falcons week 1. The Falcons, the first Falcons game. Besides that, it's been very very consistent, at least of the rush defense. Besides, we make a few big plays here and there. Although, look, it's early in the year, but I almost wonder would the Eagles get emboldened enough to actually throw the football and actually let A.J. Brown get loose against a Bucs secondary that is very sus and clearly one of the weaknesses on the team, them and special teams. That could happen here. And, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and some of these Dallas Goedert, the tight ends, very, very talented, very underrated. So that to me scares me a little bit. Now for Tampa, the good thing is they have Baker still, and they're getting Tristan Wirfs back, but they're still going against a very good defense. And Jalen Carter's obviously the ones that get a lot of attention. First play on the field, obviously the other things are kind of whatever. Obviously very physical defense. A lot of, if you're someone who watches college football, of course, a lot of former Georgia players in that team, along with Jalen Carter. So a lot of those names you'll recognize within the last couple of years, but so that's going to be a problem too. And not to mention your receiving core is a little bit depleted. Of course, you still have, Buka being your insurance policy. But, even him, he struggled a little bit. He made some mistakes last week. He's going to make mistakes again. Still a young player. He's good. He's still a young player. He's not, this is like, his fourth game in the league so far. So there's that. But again, I cannot get this out of my head, this red light theory. And I feel like, to me, and of course, everyone will say, well, the Eagles apply for that too, right? Last week, they got lucky against the Rams. Well, that may be true. The Eagles haven't had consistent special teams problems here. And I think that could be the difference in this game. I think whoever special teams, whether it's like a securing a punt, whether it's, a field goal, I think Tampa's is just untrustworthy. I do not trust him right now. And the Eagles, while yes, they had, issues last week too, if I recall, way better than Tampa. And not to mention, again, this whole red light theory. I think last week was the only game where you actually probably feel threatened. For Eagles fan, like the Chiefs game, the week before, didn't really feel threatened. Your defense really kind of controlled that game. The Dallas game was weird because it was, the rain delay, the storm delay, and whatnot. But for Tampa, it really is a lot of, you've been speeding through a lot of red lights that haven't been caught yet. And unfortunately, as a Bucs fan, I hate to say this, I kind of feel like it's gonna catch up to you now, and you're facing an actual team that kind of has the pulse, and at least it's an actual serious team. Doesn't ruin your schedule, doesn't ruin your season, but it just feels like to me you consistently get lucky with all these close games, and it's the whole red light theory thing, where again you keep on getting lucky, not getting caught, but eventually you're going to get caught, and this could be it. This could be it. Last week could have been it. The Houston game could have been it. Eventually it's going to catch up to you, and I think it's going to be this week. So I'm picking the Eagles to win, and I'm picking on the slight cover. And for, by the way, the number on the game, according to FanDuel, as Eagles minus 3.5. So it's not a big cover. I expect it to be, a very physical game, probably going to be a low-scoring game, probably. So if I were betting the over-under and the total points, I think it's like 44. So, yeah, probably around there, maybe slightly under. But I don't know. Again, I just don't trust Tampa special teams. Injuries, of course, are piling up, and the secondary is still kind of sus. And, again, I just feel like, Tampa, to me, again, is sort of a good representation of the red light theory. And eventually, again, much like I just mentioned, if you consistently run red lights, yeah, you may not get caught for all of them, but eventually you're going to get caught. And I think Tampa's going to get caught this weekend. So, pains me to say it, but we have to be honest on the show sometimes. We're being honest here. So, I think the Eagles are going to win. I think they slightly cover. And for Tampa, just as a note, they, after this, have to play on the road at Seattle. To be honest with you, that really scares me. So, then you get San Fran at home. So, it does not get any easier. The next couple weeks here before the bye week, it's Seattle. After this week, 49ers come to town, the team they have not beaten at all yet, at least this decade, or even going back to like 2019. At Detroit, revenge game. Even this game, too. This Eagles game is a revenge game. And then you have New Orleans, which is going to be the easiest game of the year so far, at least at this point. So, I'm taking Eagles to win and cover. I feel like Tampa has been gone lucky a lot, like extremely lucky. Eventually, they're going to get caught, and someone's going to beat them. And look, I don't think this is crazy to think. Eagles are a very good team. Again, I know everyone will make the jokes about Big Dom, is a celebrity security guard and this and that with Sirianni. He's a psychopath. And look, I don't care about that. It's still a good team. It's still a very hard-nosed football team that I respect as a Bucs fan, and look, I hate them too. But at the same time, you have to be real and knowing. Even I'm sure a lot of Bucs fans would agree that how lucky Tampa has been. At some point, you're going to get caught, and I think it's this weekend. So that's it for the show. We've got a little bit longer than I thought we were going to, but hey, that's fine. We got to cover everything we wanted to. I guess we'll quick on the tropics. I know a lot of folks are probably wondering about that. So here's the conundrum. So there is an area of interest in the Northern Caribbean and coastal Bahamas. It will likely be a PTC, which means a potential tropical cyclone. They'll probably issue that probably starting tomorrow, I believe, with the 5 a.m. advisory probably. So it'll be likely tomorrow. They'll probably issue that. The system, I believe, has a 90% chance of development. It's going to definitely develop here in the next 24 hours probably, perhaps even shorter. And who knows, maybe even by the 5 o'clock advisory, it'll be a PTC. But regardless, yes, there will be a tropical system. And the current thinking is it will be offshore. of Florida, but it's going to get very close. I think the idea is that it will be getting reasonably close to Florida. So, excuse me, we will here, like in Jacksonville, for example, we're going to get some impacts, right? I mean, we're probably going to get some, squally weather, some wind, maybe some minor like beach erosion, maybe some very, very minor surge, especially if it's going, parallel to the coast. The surge will go from YouTube will go this way around the system. So like how a clock goes, and how a clock goes, it's the opposite of a clock, like anti-clock. So yeah, the storm surge. I mean, look, we don't know how strong the storm will be anyway. The system, it could be a minimal tropical storm, it could be a high-end tropical storm or a hurricane. Not expecting a major hurricane, but it could be. If it is, then obviously the impacts will be a little bit higher. But in terms of our show, of course, last year we dealt with this with Helene and Milton. We did move shows around a little bit. Even what was the storm before that? Was it Debbie? Yeah, Hurricane Debbie. So we've had to move shows around before. We may have to. I'm not expecting it because it's coming in like on a Sunday, Monday type thing. So we should be good for the show on Tuesday. May have to do the show a bit later on Tuesday. We'll see. I'll let you guys know during the weekend once we get like an official cone and what we will do for our show. Like the reaction show on Saturday, we should be okay. Like the recap show, we should be fine. But next Tuesday, yeah, there's a good chance we may have moved some stuff around next week. So I'll let you guys know. But yeah, we're still watching it. Again, we can, because as we're here, we can look up, like, for example, Tropical Tidbits, by the way. It's like a good place to go to for the models and stuff. I'm not trying to turn this into a meteorology show, but yeah, it's going to get close to for us in Northeast Florida, Southeastern Georgia. Definitely looks like the Carolinas probably would be the area of like the most reasonable impact. But we'll see. But yeah, we're keeping an eye on it. Again, any shifts or wobbles with the track, we'll see. But at this point, yeah, we'll there's a slight chance we may have to make some scheduling changes early next week. We'll see. Not likely though. We'll keep an eye on it. But again, this is a reminder. It is hurricane season and stuff, and it is what it is. That's kind of, as they say, as the Eric Burris down there in Orlando with West 2 sets, it's the price of living in paradise. So again, that's it for the show today. Enjoy the games this weekend. We'll have a recap show for college football on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. So we'll be doing that live on YouTube only, not Spotify. So just make sure to subscribe to YouTube for that. And of course, we'll be back with the regular show on Tuesday, 10 after at this point. Well, we're planning on being back, but if we have to move some stuff around, we have to move some stuff around. So until technically Saturday, but also we'll see about Tuesday. Until then, enjoy the games this weekend. Take care. And of course, take care of yourselves and each other. And we'll see you guys on the next stream.